So you found the skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome to Jackson with Jackson, what is it, 11? Let's lie about human evolution with Dr. Charles Jackson, Bad Jackson, and of course, my friend of the channel, fellow sciencey YouTuber guy, good Jackson, Jackson Wheat. Jackson, how are you?
Science-ish.
You're sciencey? Okay, you're sciencey-ish, that's fine. That works.
Science-ish. Yeah.
For some reason, I feel like you're a little
science-ish
quiet all of a
things.
sudden. There we go. Got you a little bit louder.
Am I?
You were.
Ah!
No, don't do that. That's going to clip your mic. Or their headphones. So, guys, we're here for Jackson with Jackson. I think most of you know what this is, but as with all my Tuesday shows, basically this is an excuse for me to hang out with my chat and with my friends, various of whom come on for these, you know. And the excuse that we have for this is that we watch really, really dumb content by creationists, and we have drinking rules as to when we drink for various reasons to do with the creationist stuff being really bad. So, I'm going to tell these rules to you to the best of my memory, because I always try to do it from memory, and I usually get at least close. But also, today, we're going to see if Jackson can listen to all of them without laughing. He usually
Make no
fails.
promises.
Yeah, you usually fail.
Okay, the shower one gets me every time. Just imagining Charles Jackson, like, scrubbing his armpit and being like, and then I told him, why are there still monkeys?
Yeah. Alright, well, guys, we drink, and I'm going to frame this in terms of Charles Jackson, but, you know, these rules are pretty universal, right? So, we drink whenever Dr. Charles Jackson, Bad Jackson, says something that's so stupid, just kind of have to. We also take a drink whenever he gets something factually correct that he isn't just directly quoting, right? So if he's just quoting from a textbook or a scientific paper or something, doesn't count, because that's the guy who wrote it getting it right. And Charles Jackson just reporting that. He actually has to use his own brain to make a true statement. Then we take a drink. We'll also take a drink whenever Charles Jackson tells stories that didn't happen, which is in fact the shower thoughts idea. Anytime he confuses his shower thoughts and shower arguments for reality, take a drink for that. Also take a drink if Jackson or I can successfully predict what his next argument is going to be, where it's not clear what it's going to be, right? So, like, there has to be some kind of, like, well, I don't know where he's going with this, but I think that'll be a confirmed prediction. We'll also take a drink anytime Dr. Charles Jackson references the National Socialist German Workers' Party, their various activities during the 1930s and 40s, or prominent leaders thereof. And that basically covers all of the main drinking triggers, but there are a few drinking triggers that you guys can help out with. One of which Chris Reese just helped out with, which is, of course, AIG is a bag of single-eyed snakes, which was sent for $5. Thank you very much, Chris Reese, and we're going to take a quick drink for that, because that is one of the drink triggers. So, YouTube likes to... first, we'll start with AIG. AIG, historically, although apparently a bit less so lately, since I haven't had any of my stuff copyright struck, and I have some AIG stuff uploaded. But they have historically really liked to copyright claim basically anything that uses any amount of their content, even when they themselves are using fair use footage in their own talks that you're then using fair use to critique. Yeah. So for that reason, we started saying that we'll take a drink whenever you can call them a bag of dicks in the chat. But the trick is, you can't just say it outright because YouTube will censor that. So you had to do something like what Mackenzie Brown just did, saying AIG say is a agbe of a ixday, which of course is Pig Latin. So we're going to take another drink for that. We also occasionally have it said in Klingon, and recently we actually had it said correctly in Klingon, which has been a little bit of a struggle since it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to say.
Pig Latin, what Roman police spoke?
Yes, that is indeed what Roman police spoke, which is why that scene with the Roman centurion grammarian is the least realistic scene in The Life of Brian. Because, of course, he doesn't speak classical Latin. He only speaks Pig Latin. Although, actually, So, like, that whole scene is basically based on, like, John Cleese's traumatic experiences in Latin class with, like, really jerk Latin teachers who would just
Really?
berate you into getting the grammar right. And the grammar actually is all, like, the corrections are correct, but, like, the style is, like, the thing that John Cleese hated from school. And he had all these horrible memories of asshole Latin teachers doing exactly that to him. So,
Yeah.
yeah, luckily, Latin instruction, language instruction generally, has improved a lot since John Cleese was in school, because that technique of just memorizing tables, it's just not very effective. There are faster, better ways. So tonight, Chris Reese asks, "What are we drinking?" I am drinking a rum and cola. You, Jackson?
Green tea.
Green tea. I'm sure brewed with vodka.
That's what you wish to believe, then yes.
All right. There are a few other things. One is, if you super chat and your super chat includes one of the channel emojis, which you have to be a member for, take a drink for that. So if you're a channel member and you want a super chat, you might as well throw one in. Now, I do have a quick, slight addition to that, which is to say that I've been informed that the super chat system for those who are visually impaired makes it extremely difficult, if not impossible, to add those. So if you're visually impaired, and I don't know that, let me know. And if I already know it, then don't worry about it. But if you just type in the name of one of the kaiju emojis that we have, which is Mothra, Ghidorah, and Godzilla, that's fine. Because I wish YouTube was better at accessibility for the visually impaired, but it's not, and I've alerted them to this fact. So I don't know if they're going to do anything about it. They probably won't, because who am I? We got to get someone big to complain about accessibility on that front. But anyway, that's another one. And last but not least, if you gift subscriptions to the channel membership program.
Actually, gift.
What? Sorry.
Gift.
Oh, I'll back up.
It's gift.
Oh, it's gift, yeah. So yeah, if you gift channel memberships, we will take a drink for each channel membership donated. Also, Dark Law Dragon has sent a super chat that has all 3 of the kaiju emojis for $2. Thank you very much, Dark Law Dragon. So we'll take another drink. Right, last but not least, occasionally, at essentially random times that I generally don't control, you'll hear a Godzilla sound or a Mothra sound. We'll take a drink for that too. That is basically tied to various notifications on my phone. And very few of you know how to actually cause those. And some of you who do are currently muted because I know you. All right, here we go. We were just talking about Australopithecus sediba and what various people think about it with Dr. Charles Jackson. And basically, he's going to go with the contested bones route. That because there is debate at all about Australopithecus sediba, therefore it just isn't a transitional fossil, which is a really, really bad take. All right, here we go.
For the Homo genus, us, but Ian Tattersall, who is like the evolutionist's greatest world expert on Neanderthal fossils, the guy, it's his whole life's work.
Okay, so we're going to the Neanderthal fossil guy about Australopithecus sediba, which, I mean, I'm sure he's got a better take than Jackson does, bad Jackson. But, like, why not go to the Australopithecus guys? I don't know.
What's his Berger? Isn't it Lee Berger? Who's the
Lee...
sediba guy?
Yeah. Oh, isn't Lee Berger also the guy who's like weirdly insistent that Homo sapiens evolved in South Africa?
And I think it was from like sediba, wasn't it? Doesn't he? Isn't he like sediba is the ancestor of Homo? Isn't that his shtick?
I think so. And look, you're allowed to have your own pet theories, but like, those don't seem very likely to me, and the vast majority of the field of paleoanthropology would agree with that.
So maybe there's like a fire in the school right now, and this is smoke filling the room.
Well, last time it looked like it was filmed through urine, so... Okay, so guys, I told Jackson this, but between the last Jackson with Jackson and this one, somehow I managed to like lose the video. I think I must have deleted it while I was purging out old videos that I didn't need anymore. Because I don't know if you know this, but running a channel like this where I respond to Creationist videos, I end up collecting a massive download folder of videos that are all like an hour long. So every once in a while I purge them, and I guess this one was purged. And so when I refound a copy of it, it's a different copy with a different color grading. Because apparently, ASU, Arizona State University, where this was filmed, does not allow you to not use a weird color grading when you're filming. You must color grade your film, apparently.
at the American Museum of Natural History in New York City. He said, Sediba's a distinct species, probably closely related to Australopithecus africanus, the one in the story after Lucy. But I wouldn't classify it as the root of the Homo genus. So there.
Sure.
Yes,
Sure, I'd agree with that.
that's Godzilla emoji, so we're going to take a drink for that. And it's from Vandalia 1998 for $10, who says, well, until YouTube gets better closed caption indicators, you could always bring on a third person on your Tuesday show to be sign language translator for your deaf fans. So actually I recently heard from a deaf fan, and they said that while the AI subtitles aren't perfect, they're actually good enough that they actually have a pretty easy time following. And I mean, look, I don't currently know anyone who could effectively do like real-time signing translation. In fact, I think the person I know who signs the best outside of like a few distant relations is like my dad, who actually like went to college to learn how to effectively do education for the deaf. But I don't think he's got the time or the inclination to come on camera and try to sign in real time with all these weird words like Australopithecus africanus. But what I would like eventually to be able to do is to have like the time to either myself or possibly hire someone for a bit to like do some transcriptions for subtitles. That would actually be really cool. Right now, though, it's probably lower priority than being able to do things like rent. That's the higher priority right now. So that's a long-term goal that I would like for the channel, is to be able to get reliable, really good subtitles for accessibility for the hearing impaired. But so here's the thing with this Ian Tattersall, there we go, thing. Yeah, Australopithecus sediba is basically Lee Berger's like pet species, and he's like, oh no, this is the thing. This is what everyone evolved from Australopithecus sediba. Ian Tattersall, like most paleoanthropologists, is basically just going with, well, look, there are numerous coexisting Australopithecus species at any given time, right? Only one of them is likely to be the actual root of genus Homo, and it's probably not this particular one. That's it. That doesn't make Australopithecus sediba not transitional. It doesn't mean that human evolution is any less likely to have occurred, right? It's literally just someone saying, like, yeah, I don't think you actually found the one in this case. That's it.
So there's one paper I'm aware of that actually tries to argue that some Australopith fossils are directly ancestral to others, and that was a 2019 paper. And it also classifies sediba as sister to Homo. Only Australopith it says which is directly ancestral to us is like Garhi. It's also ancestral to sediba. So I don't know. They don't say like this is the species that like Homo evolved out of, but like this is one of the ancestors that also evolved into sediba. I think it was interesting that they placed it on the line to both of our species, or genera. No, species, yeah. Anyway.
Alright. Well, if it's on the line to the genus, then it's on the line to the species, too.
And yeah, to Homo genus, but also to Australopithecus sediba. That's why I was like,
okay.
Well, it's to the different species, because I was thinking genus first, and I was like, well, they're also in the same genus. So, anyway.
Alright, so I'm going to hit play.
There's debate about it when a new fossil comes up, and they make these mock-ups and everything, and they all discuss it. But Berger...
discussion.
That's literally...
that.
That's literally what science is. I'm taking a drink for that being like a thing that needs to be said. Oh my goodness, new scientific data comes in, and then not everyone immediately agrees on how to interpret it. Man, it's almost like scientists aren't a bunch of dogmatists who all just accept some kind of pre-drawn conclusion. How horrible.
Is the guy who came up with the newest one, Homo naledi, and that's why I'm mentioning him. In 1998, Berger got in National Geographic. This was before Australopithecus sediba, and it was the Australopithecus africanus fossil, and National Geographic realized they had to redraw the family.
Can we pause for a moment? I think I know where he's going with this, but I guess not a prediction in the sense
Just
that
call
you
it.
need.
Say it's a prediction.
It's a prediction. I'm making predictions.
Okay, because you know
That
who
means creationism is true.
you know that we don't get in trouble if we like are loose with the drinking rules, right? Like no one comes to get us. Like the drinking
I'm
game
just trying to
police.
follow your rules, man. I don't want to end up in YouTube jail or something, man. Or the Shadow Realm.
You might end up in the YouTube Shadow Realm, but not because of this.
Okay, all right, fair. You got me there. Okay. I'm willing to bet because you mentioned Australopithecus africanus, which is not on our line. It's on the line. Well, it's like near Paranthropus. So Australopithecus is very weird as a genus in the sense that it's paraphyletic to not one but multiple other genera.
Yeah, which
And
is
that's
unfortunate.
unfortunate. It is in some sense understandable. Because when you have fossils that are really close to today, but you don't consider them part of your own genus, but they're really close, if evolution were true, is basically what I'm saying. If evolution were true, we should expect that, like, towards the end of the branches, it should be hard, and if we have a good fossil record,
Which
it
we
should
do
be
in this
difficult
case.
to, like, distinguish where one group starts and one group ends. So with Australopiths, kind of have to be paraphyletic, because otherwise we'd call all of them Homo, and that really stretched the definition of Homo.
Right. Yeah. At that point, the creationists might have a point that it's like, why are we calling all these very clearly not that similar to human animals humans?
Right. We could say that like all Australopiths are actually all Homo, but like that would be really weird.
Yeah. I was going to say we could just call them all
Because they're
Australopithecus, but then no, we
quite
couldn't
different from
because
us. But
Homo sapiens has priority in the genius name if you're going to fold them all in. Sorry, that was just about the details of taxonomy and taxonomic rules. Please continue. Uh-oh, I think we may have lost Jackson. I'll type at him. Jackson, have we lost you? Question mark. Type that into him in Discord. I think we may have lost him. I hope I didn't lose you guys. No, it looks like Oh, okay, well, Jackson can hear me, but I can't hear him. So we're gonna hit play.
Hello?
Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me?
Welcome back.
That's very weird. I never stopped hearing you. Very strange. Anyway, Africanus is actually closer to another genus which evolved out of Australopithecus called Paranthropus. Paranthropus was a robust Australopith. They're very large and had thick bones and all this. And so Africanus is more closely related to them than to us. And so I'm willing to bet that that's what this article is about to say. That's
Okay,
my
that's your
prediction.
prediction? Okay. All right.
Family tree because something was wrong with Australopithecus africanus. There's Australopithecus afarensis, which is Lucy. How many have heard of the Lucy
closely
fossil?
related
Lucy,
to
okay.
us.
And after that, 1,000,000 years later in the story, because it's higher up enough in the fossil strata and the rock layers, that evolutionists, by
Or
their
maybe it was
reckoning, would say,
earlier.
Sorry?
Maybe it was earlier than both of us. Like, that was primitive with regard to both Africanus and Homo. Okay, continue.
it came 1,000,000 years later. That's the next one up is Australopithecus africanus. Now look at these words carefully and what they're saying. Because the fossil record for early hominids, 1998, is so fragmentary, inferences and predictions fill in the gaps. In the absence
Hey, here's a fun thing about a bunch of those predictions. They've been successfully fulfilled. Isn't that neat?
Oh,
Yeah.
it was something.
We're going to take a drink for the insanity of saying, oh, hey, in 1994, someone was saying that they were making predictions and then not bothering to bother with the whole, like, well, you know, predictions that largely came true at a fragmentary fossil record that was also significantly filled in by subsequent finds. Wah, wah.
I'm reading this right now. Well-preserved skulls show that Africanus had a slightly larger brain than Afarensis, as well as skull features that resemble those of the first Homo species. But a closer look at the available fossils reveals that Africanus may have had longer arms and shorter legs, limbs that were more chimp-like than Afarensis. If so, the implications are striking. One possibility is that hominids underwent an evolutionary reversal between Afarensis and Africanus, perhaps to adapt to a more arboreal, I'm going to assume, lifestyle.
I mean,
So
I wouldn't be super shocked if at some point hominins became less arboreal, then for a little bit became a little bit more arboreal, then went back to being less arboreal.
That's not super surprising. Like
Yeah.
the brow ridge, for instance, has waxed and waned multiple times in human evolution. If you talk about like, Neanderthals had a really big brow ridge. Well, yeah, but like Homo erectus didn't.
Right.
Kind of Franken.
Despite the fact that Homo erectus is less closely related to Homo sapiens than Homo neanderthalensis.
Right. Exactly.
Plus, it's actually fairly variable in humans. Like its brow ridges vary significantly. Like there are areas of the world, like parts of Australia and parts of Africa, where people have larger eyebrow ridges than like your average Chinese person who has particularly low, not prominent brow ridges. Right? Like it varies. Like it's sort of medium-ish in large parts of like Central Asia and Europe. It's sort of reduced in parts of East Asia. It's more prominent in like Australia. Like it's a thing. It varies. You can't just look at brow ridges and be like, oh, this is primitive.
Right, absolutely.
It's almost like there's a holistic approach to hominin fossils and classifications, and you have to look at numerous traits. And you can't just be like, well, limbs, that's it. It's the limbs. It's all about the limbs, or it's all about the brow ridges, or it's all about the, like, whatever, right? Like, it's...
Sounds like fake news, Dapper.
I know.
That's what you're saying.
How dare we look at multivariate analyses for characters' traits when looking to classify organisms?
My young Earth creationism.
To be fair, even young Earth creationists don't do that when they're doing their baromenology. They try to find data sets with numerous character traits so that they can create, like, n-dimensional analyses when they're looking for their gaps in the baromenological analysis. Which, look, guys, I've found a video about baromenology, and there's a fair chance that eventually I'm going to be covering baromenology in some depth. Look forward to that.
The fossil specimens complete enough to gauge Australopithecus africanus's body dimensions, it had been assumed that the species had at least as human-like a build as the earlier Afarensis, Lucy's species. Well-preserved skulls show that Africanus had a slightly larger brain than Afarensis,
which was predicted,
as well as skull features that resembled those of the first Homo species. Now, everyone in the room here has different shaped skulls. Just look around.
Okay, I'm going to take a drink, because as much as we just did talk about the fact that human anatomy is variable, we now have to talk about the fact that there are, in fact, limits to variation within species. So here's the thing, right? Humans have characteristics of the skull. For instance, we have things like humans have a parabolic shape to the palate, rather than a squared off boxy shape like you have in other apes. You have things like, the position of the foramen magnum, which granted is pretty much the same in Australopithecus as it is in Homo. A little bit more at the bottom and facing directly down in Homo, but not like extremely. But I mean, there's other things, right? There's cranial capacity, and these only vary so much, right? Like, no Homo sapiens who isn't pathological has as small a cranial capacity as a non-pathological Australopithecus afarensis. It's just not happening. So, like, I don't know, Jackson, you have anything else to add on there? Nope, because we can't hear you, Jackson. You gotta figure out why that keeps happening. Maybe you're unplugging your microphone.
So that's...
Oh, drink for Godzilla. Twice. That's 2 drinks for Godzilla. All right, here we go.
Pepper, can you hear me?
Oh, I can now. Jackson,
I don't know what's going on. Okay.
You gotta check your microphone, I think, maybe.
It's just sitting right here. I haven't moved it.
I don't know. Maybe it's your internet. Are you having, like, hurricane
Probably
problems?
I'm way away from the hurricanes.
Well, you might not be way away from, like, some hub that's providing some of the internet going to your area, though. Because I don't know how the network works. It's a bunch of tubes.
I would say it's probably the internet more than the microphone. I'm more likely to blame the internet.
There might be a cloggage in the tubes, because as we all know, the internet is a series of tubes.
creationists and the wires. Actually, you know what? I really wouldn't be surprised if like Jungle Jargon argued that the internet was a tube or something like that.
I mean, he did literally tell me that I needed to put electrons into my cell phone battery because that's how charging your battery works, is you just shove a bunch of electrons into it, and then the electrons come out.
Saying.
Oh man, Jungle Jargon is a very special case of like, how did you ever come to any of these ideas? Remember the time he just would refuse to accept that maybe the Phoenicians weren't the same people as the Berbers? Completely different groups of people speaking different languages throughout history. Nope, all the same. And all because the Berbers had a Y chromosome haplotype that was convenient to his ideas about human history. That's it. That was his entire reasoning.
Well within the range of normal differences, and it's not necessarily an evolutionary sequence, but take a look at what they say next.
No, it's not well within the range. That's the thing, right? We have known ranges for Homo sapiens. When things fall outside those ranges, we can check to see if they're pathological, because pathologies, especially those that are shared between very similar species, have telltale signs that you can check for. And when you find a non-pathological skull that's outside the range of human variation, which has already been measured, the only reasonable thing to conclude is that you have a new species. That's how character-based analysis for morphospecies works, right? Because with fossils, as a rule, you have to go with the morphospecies concept. So, Jackson, I don't know, you want to do some morphospecies talk? What is a morphospecies? What are species concepts? I think it might be worth it.
Sure. There are different ideas for what constitutes a species. The most general sort of species concept, the one that you're likely to encounter in high school or early college, is the biological species concept, which was coined by Ernst Mayr in 1942. Basically, just says that a species is a population that is capable of breeding and producing fertile offspring. But of course, that only works for sexually reproducing organisms, which means
and only really extant sexually reproducing organisms.
Only extant sexually reproducing organisms, so a subset of like eukaryotes. That's it. Is really all this works for. So obviously, that's not sufficient for everything. Not even for all living things, and certainly not for extinct organisms who are not living at all. So we have the morphospecies concept, where you're looking at their morphology and you're comparing it with other fossils and trying to gauge, like, is there a statistically significant difference between the size of their femur and their humerus and all this sort of stuff. There's ecological species concept, is the ecology that this population is occupying the same as another closely related population. There are lots and lots and lots of different species concepts, and the reason is, of course, that species are kind of arbitrary. Mm-hmm. We have like general sort of rules that we can try to apply to get an idea, but really we're just using these as like signposts, basically. Like,
yeah,
we consider these the same, and if so, we use that because it's useful. We make these pronouncements about whether or not something's a species because it's useful to us, because we can put a label on it and talk about it and say, here is a way this is statistically significant from some other population which is similar.
So this actually goes back to what we talked about on Saturday with Vishanti and that paper by Gabriella Haynes, right? Where she's pointing out that people arguing about where to put the label of a taxon on a tree means that the taxon is like somehow invalid or something. Well, the thing is, where you put a name on a tree doesn't really matter. That's an arbitrary choice, right? You can say, okay, well, this little node here, we're going to call everything after that aviale, or homo, or homininidae, right? But you could just as easily back it up a node, right? Like, it wouldn't be wrong to have gone with Hylobatidae and homininidae are going to be the same family, and then we have, like, subfamilies within to separate what are now Hylobatids and hominids, right? Like, that wouldn't be wrong. We haven't done that, but it wouldn't be more or less wrong. The names we apply don't matter. The lineages objectively exist, and we can do tests to determine what the lineages most likely are. But where you put labels, man, it doesn't really matter, right? It's just a human convention, which is a fine thing to do. You also have to remember that isn't what's actually describing reality. That's just sticking a label on it. So
Yeah, exactly.
Here we go.
A closer look at the available fossils in 1998 reveals Africanus may have had longer arms and shorter legs than Lucy.
Okay.
Limbs that were more chimp-like than Afarensis. Okay, this is backwards from their story.
Yeah, because evolution isn't linear, right? So basically, Charles Jackson here is just complaining, oh man, the evolution of hominins wasn't orthogenic. Like, yeah, we all know orthogenesis hasn't really been suggested as a viable option for coming up on a century now, isn't it? I think so.
Yeah, it depends on who you ask, but yes, basically, if you... Yeah, basically. We'll just say yeah. We'll just say yeah, basically.
First, I'll take a quick drink for Bad Jackson saying, oh, man, we should have orthogenesis. I think I just accidentally reduced the number. I did. We're up to 10, so we'll take a drink. So, for those of you who might not be familiar with it, because this is sort of like a history of science thing, orthogenesis is the belief that basically there's like a momentum to evolution. So, elephants didn't get to be really big because being really big continued to be advantageous throughout their evolutionary history. They did it because they sort of like got on the big train and couldn't get off. And eventually, maybe, if they last long enough, they'll get so big that they just collapse on themselves because there you go. They just got too big and now they're going to collapse. Or like, you look at like Megalosaurus, the giant Irish elk. Like, oh, well, that's clearly on a trend of getting antlers that are way too big. Eventually, that species is going to go extinct because its head is bowed down and it just can't lift its head up anymore, and that's going to be the end of that species. Turns out, no. There's no such thing as an evolutionary momentum. You can, once environmental conditions change, and what used to be favorable for a long time, causing directional selection, is no longer favorable, that's when the species starts evolving away from that, as long as the change isn't so big that the species just goes extinct anyway. It's also why we see what we actually see, which is lots and lots of branching instead of just lineages marching along in sort of a march of progress style. That's why we have things like branches within Australopithecus and Homo, where you have side branches that ultimately went extinct, but weren't on the direct line to Homo sapiens. So Charles Jackson is basically saying, oh man, evolution not orthogenic, therefore I guess it doesn't happen. But that's a straw man, right? Because there are no... I guess I can't say there are no, right? Because you can find someone who believes anything, right? But there are no, essentially, there are no evolutionary biologists who are still saying that orthogenesis is a reasonable hypothesis. And
yeah, you had a few American paleontologists in like the late 1800s. Then it kind of petered out, like in France, really, during what was known as the eclipse of Darwinism. So you had a period basically after Darwin had died, where basically every scientist essentially agreed that like common ancestry is definitely true. Like Darwin was super successful with that. He was less successful with natural selection as the mechanism of evolution, because people were still putting in things like orthogenesis, Lamarckism, and other like macromutationism and all that sort of stuff. Not necessarily saying all of those are wrong. Beside the point. So it wasn't until orthogenesis kind of stuck around for a little bit. Then in the 1930s, you had population genetics established as a rigorous mathematical field, and then it was like, oh no, all these other ideas, Lamarckism can't be true to the extent that Lamarck wants it to be. Orthogenesis just isn't true.
Right.
Macromutationism, yeah, sort of. It has some merits to it. Yeah, so orthogenesis kind of petered out in like the late 1920s, early 1930s, that sort of period. And then basically from the 1930s on, there's been absolutely no question. Like, natural selection happens. It's one of the major mechanisms of evolution. Like,
yeah,
there's not much to argue there at this point.
No, there really isn't. All right, we're going to hit play.
If so, the implications are striking. Not if you're a creationist. Only for an evolutionist is this striking.
So it's striking in that it means that the history of the modes of locomotion available to hominins is more complicated than previously thought. That's it. That is striking, right? But like, it's not at all showing what Dr. Charles Jackson needs it to show, which is to say that there is no evolutionary sequence that can be drawn between basal Australopithecines all the way to Homo. I mean, it just doesn't show that.
One possibility is that hominids underwent an evolutionary reversal between Afarensis and Africanus. Okay, here's what happens. They find a monkey-like looking thing that is touted since 1974 as the missing link.
Monkey-like looking thing.
I mean, it is a monkey.
I mean, that's not how he's using that term, Dapper,
That's
and
true.
you know it.
Okay, we'll take a drink for that one. He probably wouldn't think it is a monkey anyway, because he probably thinks that apes aren't monkeys.
That's probably true, yeah.
Yeah.
And a million years later, in the rocks, by their reckoning, they find another fossil.
In the rocks, by their reckoning, you think it wasn't rocks there at Bad Jackson?
It was in the air.
It was in the clouds, yeah.
There was something in the air tonight, Dapper.
Apparently it's hominin fossils just floating by.
That's what Phil Collins was talking about.
To be fair, that was probably just a misspeak, but you know, it's funny anyway.
That instead of becoming more human-like, it looks more like a monkey than Lucy.
Yeah, except for that whole cranial capacity and overall skull morphology, huh? Yeah. Yeah,
That's how all monkeys are arboreal also, apparently.
Right? Also, what is this thing with thinking that having some arboreal adaptations means that you're not a bipedal locomotor like a human? Like, I don't know if you guys know, but humans have arboreal adaptations. Humans are pretty good at climbing trees. They're not as good as, like, you know, a chimpanzee is. But, most humans have climbed trees and done so pretty effectively. Like, this is normal human behavior to climb trees. In fact, climbing trees is actually pretty common in, like, the animal world. Like, crocodiles climb trees. And they're not very well adapted to arboreality compared to humans. Still do it. I mean, granted, you're not, like, you're gonna see them jumping from tree to tree like, you know, a spider monkey or something. But, like...
Develop brachiation. Can you imagine a brachiating crocodile? That'd be horrifying.
Spec Evo project. Brachiating crocodiles. Do it, someone. I want to see that art. All right, guys, here you go. If you can do art, send me a picture of a brachiating crocodile, and I will feature it on the channel. I promise. Just remind me that I said this. Maybe give me the timestamp. All right, here we go.
They found exactly the opposite of what their theory said they should find, and it did not bother them.
For one aspect of the anatomy, yes, but not for any of the others.
Also, Africanus is, as we stated earlier, like a side branch. It's not directly ancestral to us.
Mm-hmm.
So if we imagine, like, Afarensis is like our common ancestor with Africanus, for instance, have like, we're just taking this all at face value. Like, I don't know what the exact data is, but I don't think Afarensis is a common ancestor with Africanus. But just take this all at face value. All this article is saying is one lineage of Australopiths became slightly more arboreal.
Yep, and one that is not directly ancestral to Homo, according to most workers.
Yes, like
yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
And
but also still increased in cranial capacity.
Yes. Right.
Which means that, you know, later on through Australopithecus evolution, there was a broad trend because of consistent directional selection for larger brain capacity. It's almost like all of this doesn't really do anything to contradict or even diminish the evidence for evolution of humans from common ancestors with other apes. And of course, well, to be fair, Dr. Charles Jackson, Bad Jackson, did say that he was intentionally not going over the genetics stuff for this particular talk because he was brought in specifically to talk about the fossils. Even if the fossils are weird, we have very conclusive evidence from genetics that humans definitely are apes. There's really no room for denying it. The best creationists have done is Jeffrey Tompkins, who his work consisted of 2 papers, one in which he just used a bugged program and it gave him bogus results, and even the other creationists were like, dude, no, can't. That's
just lying.
Clearly wrong.
That's basically it.
Well, then at that point, he said, oh, okay, well, I'm going to do it with the right version of the program, which, to be fair, he did, but then he just failed at high school arithmetic. Like, literally, Algebra 2 is a level at which he is failing. Which is
Yeah.
Pretty bad when you think about it. And I mean high school algebra too. We're not talking like, you know, the quick little algebra class that maybe you took in college to get ready for like the calculus class because maybe, you know, your math grades were iffy. No, we're talking like you're a sophomore in high school learning some math, and Jeffrey Tompkins is worse than you. Vandelli 1998 for $5 says, someone get on an artificial selection breeding for arboreal croc for Jackson with a Mothra emoji, so we take a drink. I actually don't suggest that you artificially breed brachiating crocs because that sounds like the setup to a horror movie. And as a rule, if it sounds like the setup to a horror movie, I think it's probably a bad idea. Which is why every once in a while I read something like, oh, scientists unthawed a giant virus from the Siberian tundra. I'm like, why would you do that? Don't do that. Don't revive the ancient pathogens. That's literally how horror movies start. In fact, that's how V-Wars, which is a horror series, which wasn't very good, but that is how it started. The vampire virus was thawed out of the Siberian tundra. Don't watch V-Wars. It was not very good, in my opinion, right? Like, if you actually do enjoy it, then fine, whatever. I couldn't get through, like, the third episode. Anyway, we're not here for vampire fiction reviews. That's Top Hats off stream. All right, here we go.
I feel like Silly Rabbit, tricks are for kids, you know? Silly Creationist, science is for evolution.
Should we drink for amazingly cringy Dr. Charles Jackson? Hey, hello, fellow youths.
Oh, it was a joke that didn't land.
Oh, that was a joke that didn't land, which is something we didn't actually say. Jokes that don't land. Yeah, we do take a drink for that. So, for some reason, Dr. Charles Jackson really does do the hello, fellow kids kind of thing a lot. I don't know why, because it's always comes across as so ingenuine. Yeah, I don't, especially when he's doing like 90s era commercials for kids cereal. where is he right now? Because it looks like he's in the Arizona State University. But then again, there are some like older people in the audience, so I don't know. Maybe that is audience appropriate. I doubt it's appropriate for my audience. I wouldn't give you a joke based on well, okay, I guess I might. But it would probably do it self-awarely if I gave you a joke based on a 90s commercial catchphrase. Anyway.
Silly Creationists, evolution just went backwards for 1,000,000 years.
I mean, kind of. A reversal really isn't a great way to phrase it because evolution doesn't go backwards in the sense of reverting to earlier genotypes generally, but it can revert to previous phenotypes, or at least phenotypes that are similar in some ways to previous phenotypes, because something like limb proportion isn't exactly like a giant thing. It's not like, you know, oh, you regained the ability to like grow teeth when you lost it, like a bird, right? Birds regrowing teeth, now that would be pretty hard to understand. But like two variations in hominin having different levels of adaptation to climbing trees, it's like, okay. That's the kind of evolution that creationists think is okay. You know how I know? Because different cats have different levels of arboreality, and they think all of Felidae has a common ancestor. So, I mean, that's one of the things about this, right? Like, the entire hominid family has the kind of variation that has less variation, actually, than groups that they think are all share a common ancestry. Specifically, actually, even Felidae, right? The genetic difference between tigers and lions, which I've heard creationists legitimately argue are actually the same species.
Yes, I've heard that too.
They have more
By far.
Yeah, but it's not even like it's not really all that close. So like there's an amazing amount of special pleading that happens just for apes, especially humans. Because they have to, right? If they applied a consistent like heuristic to what counts as what's available for having common ancestry, right? I'm not even asking them to get it right. I'm just asking them to have a consistent heuristic. But the problem is, if they do that and they want to leave humans as a separate kind, then it basically just goes back to like the species or maybe the genus if you're lucky.
Gotta have consistent lore, guys.
Yeah, well, they don't. I wish they did. It would be a lot more fun if creationists had consistent lore, right? But then again, really, does anyone have consistent lore?
I don't know.
Different franchises have different levels of consistency. And then every once in a while, a franchise will just delete all previous consistency. Like Star Wars did when they were just like, yeah, Legends is gone now. Oh, okay.
That was big sad.
Yeah, it was big sad. I mean, I understand why they did it. And I was okay with their reasoning. I just wish they'd done better with their new canon. because I prefer legends in most cases.
Yeah, you are correct. You have no argument from me, good sir.
There we go, guys. Legends is better than canon. Deal with it.
I mean, some canon, yeah, like the sequels.
Look,
for
there are
instance.
exceptions, right? There is some good canon stuff out there. However, on the whole,
however,
like for instance, like Imperial remnants in Legends make way more sense than the First Order that just kind of pops out of nowhere, apparently, for some reason, and just has access to the resources to turn an entire planet into a super weapon. Like, what? No.
Dapper. Anyway. They just came back. The Emperor just returned.
God, that's so much. All right, we're gonna hit play because I got to stop talking about the various mistakes that Disney has made in terms of taking one of the most profitable franchises in the history of media and then just dragging it through the mud for some reason. Anyway.
That's a simple explanation. If we did something like that, see, that's a little ingenuous, and it is a...
If you did something like that, like every single time one of your predictions doesn't come true and you're like, that was never our prediction in the first place. Yeah, I wonder what scientists would say about that. I love the idea that Charles Jackson is trying to actually argue that creationists are the intellectually honest one in this discussion. Oh, I'm going to take a drink for it, because that's so ridiculous. If only everyone were as intellectually honest and as fair as creationists, the world would be a better place, and everyone would be taking massive doses of broad-spectrum antibiotics for every little tiny infection. You don't know that reference, go watch our previous episodes.
Problem, and it should be, but it just reversed evolution, perhaps to adapt to a more arboreal environment. Berger, here Lee Berger weighs in 1998, thinks it more likely that the two species evolved separately. For one of them to evolve is bad enough, but now he says they're separate lineages.
Yeah, that's just the consensus. There's the entire field of paleoanthropology recognizes that more than one hominid species was existing at the same time throughout most of the history of the evolution of hominins. That's also not unusual, right? Like, most genera have more than one species. Genus Homo was kind of weird, right? Like, the other 8 genera have more than one species. There's more than one species of pan, there's more than one species of gorilla, and there's more than one species of pongo. So why would it be weird for there to be more than one species at the same time of Australopithecus or Homo? That's normal. It's weird that humans are the last man standing among the genus Homo. Jackson, am I crazy about that? Like, doesn't that just seem normal that there would be more than one species of the same genus at the same time on Earth?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. You're right. It is strange that there were lots of different species of Homo, and they've all until relatively recently too.
Yeah,
that's like a few tens of thousands of years, and then whoosh, gone.
And suddenly Homo sapiens is the only ones sticking around. Yeah. This argument baffles me. We're taking a drink for why would there be more than one species of the same genus at the same time, says the man living in a time where that's the case for the majority of genera.
Right. Like, monotypic things are very strange.
Yeah.
It's like we're aware of them. We're like, oh yeah, this thing is monotypic for its genus or whatever. It
like the lonely remaining Rhynchocephalian Sphenodon.
Yeah, or
the reason you know what the Tuatara is because it's weird that there's only one of them in the world, and it's Rhynchocephalia. It used to be a huge, diverse group of diapsids. They used to be like the dominant small-body diapsid throughout most of the Mesozoic. Lizards were basically just chump change. No one even cared about lizards. Then KPG happens, and for some reason, Rhynchocephalia just gets hit hard, and lizards just take over basically all the niches they were occupying, and now there's one little lonely species with 2 subspecies existing on tiny little islands near New Zealand. Well, in New Zealand politically, but not on one of the main islands.
Yeah, there's also like Welwitschia, which is a weird little plant native to, I believe it's Africa, which is a monotypic. And there's the entire phylum Placozoa is monotypic. Trichoplax adherens. Now, I say that sort of tongue-in-cheek because there are researchers the Placozoan experts would argue that there's more than one species based on doing genetic sampling of different strains of Trichoplax, and honestly, I can't argue with them on that. I've read a few of the papers, and it's like, yeah, it seems really weird to say that there's only one species. There are multiple geographically isolated strains that are different genetically. Like, yeah, I can't really argue that those aren't different species. So,
I mean, you can if you have the same reasoning as saying that lions and tigers are the same species.
like I said, I can't argue.
By the way, actually, I recently completed my patrons and channel members can, but I did a series on a Robert Carter talk. It's actually an argument that he makes, and so I go through every single species definition in common use besides the biological species definition, and show that lions and tigers meet every single one of them. Therefore, the only reasonable thing to contend, since they meet almost every single definition for a species, is that yes, they are separate species. It's almost like it's a little bit more nuanced than just, let's look at the biological species definition and then conclude that every member of genus Panthera is the same species.
Yeah.
Vandalia 1998 for $5. Vandalia 1998, you're trying to put my hypothetical children through college. In another species of Homo or a species of Australopithecus survived, if another species of Homo or a species of Australopithecus survived, do you think we would live alongside them as equals or have them in a zoo? That depends on how I'm feeling about the human race at a given time, honestly.
I have feelings.
So the thing is, I think it would vary, right? I think it would vary regionally. I think there are places where they would be like a subhuman class. There would be other places where they'd just be like second-class citizens. There'd be other places where they were more or less equal. There might even be places where there would be like, genocides. Because the thing is, human interaction with other humans is radically varied. And also their interaction with other species is radically varied. I can't imagine that wouldn't be the case for another species of genus Homo. So like if Neanderthals existed today, would they be treated as equals? Sometimes probably, sometimes not. Sometimes they'd probably be horribly treated. So yeah, it's probably just varied.
I'm going to give a spicy take.
Ooh.
I think it's weird, bizarre, honestly, to see other great apes in zoos.
Yeah, I have my moral qualms
It disturbs me.
Yeah.
See, a gorilla. So I went to the Memphis Zoo recently, and one of the things there is they have, well, they actually have gorillas and bonobos. The bonobo sitting right in front of the glass is like looking at us. Make eye contact with that bonobo, and we were with one of the curators, and she instructed one of my friends to like pull stuff out of her purse and show the bonobo, who was like looking curiously at all this. It's basically a person. Like,
yeah, look,
and you can identify the emotions on this animal's face.
Mm-hmm.
Just exactly know what they're thinking. Like, I have a very hard time seeing other great apes in ages. That's just my opinion. But anyway.
Look, I don't think that great apes should be granted like full citizenship in various countries or something, because they obviously can't participate fully in human society. However, the idea of extending some of the basic human rights to great apes, I think there are great arguments to be made in favor of that. And most of the counter arguments that I can imagine involve things like, well, there are zoos that have valuable breeding programs that are preserving species against increasing habitat loss and conflict with humans in their home range. That might be true. And it's a complicated issue if it is. I don't know that I am the one who should be solving it, especially since, I'm not even an ape, right?
That's true, yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely morally iffy, in my opinion, to keep great apes in captivity. You certainly shouldn't have them as pets. There's no reason to do that.
Yes.
For both practical and moral reasons, I think that's completely unacceptable to keep pets. Yeah. So yeah, I got thoughts on that. I don't know if we have time to get into all of them, but I generally agree with you, Jackson. It feels very off to me to have them as like on public display, especially. I think the case for like sanctuaries is pretty good. So like if you have apes,
like we have Chimp Haven down here in Shreveport.
Yeah, that's sort of like a It's more like akin to a hospital where like people who are for some
retirement
reason,
home.
Yeah, right.
What they call it, really. Yeah.
So yeah, it's those I think are reasonable because there are cases where you just can't return animals to the wild. They need a place to stay. Okay, well we'll take care of them. But like just capturing animals for the apes for the pet trade or the bushmeat trade or the zoos, no, I'm not really okay with that. Anyway, here we go. I'm gonna get sad if I keep thinking about chimpanzees in cages.
So the most probable idea is that Afarensis and Africanus are sister species that share a missing link ancestor. Okay, now that makes neither of them the missing link.
No, that's not how.
Weren't proposed to be in the first place.
Okay, we're gonna take a drink for a couple. We're gonna take 2 drinks. One is for just using missing link. Stop saying missing link, creationists. It's not a proper term. But we'll take a drink for that. We're gonna take another drink because you know what he means by missing. But here's the thing: they're both transitional. Even though at least one of them isn't on the direct lineage, you don't have to be on the direct lineage to be transitional. So, a transitional species shows a mosaic of traits between 2 distinct morphologies, one of which is thought to be ancestral to the other. All Australopithecines are transitional between basal Miocene apes and modern humans, all of them. Because they all have a mix of the morphology of basal Miocene apes and modern human morphology. So even though some of them aren't directly ancestral to modern humans, and even though some of them might have adaptations that are taking them away from the human morphology, like increasing arboreality with different limb proportions in Africanus, that still doesn't make them not transitional species. Because it is not, I want to really hammer this home, to be a transitional species, it is not required that you be directly ancestral to any extant species. Any disagreements from Good Jackson?
Sounds good to me.
All right, here we go.
That means they are sisters and some other link is now in there that they came from. So it's just saying.
By the way, standard practice in cladistics is to assume that you have never found the direct ancestor. Because 1, chances are you haven't, and 2, how would you demonstrate it even if you did? In most cases, you couldn't. But the thing is, that these transitional forms exist, and that they meet, the expected morphologies, is itself a prediction of evolution, and was specifically not predicted by creationism. Creationism can accommodate, evolution successfully predicts, and that's one of the biggest differences between the two. Now, to be fair, creationists do make predictions, it's just that they are consistently not true. And also sometimes not even tested. Like Nathaniel Jeans will be like, well, I'm predicting mutation rates in African lineages. Like, okay, you gonna test that? No, I don't have to test that. We'll wait for everyone else to test it. Okay, sure. Bye. It's your job to test your hypotheses, man.
That they might have even lived at the same time. They're sisters.
Yes, as we already covered, members of the same genus tend to live at the same. Multiple members of the same genus tend to live at the same time at any given time. Like, look at a different genus. Well, because we already listed like Panthera and Pan and Gorilla and Pongo. Let's look at Canis, right? Creationists love that genus because it has so many hybrids. But still, we've got Canis lupus. We've got Canis rufus, if that's valid. It might not be. I don't know. Canis aureus, Canis latrans. What am I? There's at least one more Canis that I'm missing. What is it?
Do not know. Sorry.
Darn it, Jackson. This is why I bring you on, just because you know all the genera and the orders and whatnot.
If you thought that I knew all the species and genera and orders, then someone has misled you.
No, that's true. You don't even know what a spiralian is, so that's fair.
You know what? You know what, Dapper?
Yes?
Look at me.
I can't look at you. You're not on camera.
One's not the grandma or the grandpa. If so, only one could have been ancestral to humans, which branch of the family tree eventually led to us. So this is the kind of things that Berger has weighed in the past few years, and I've been following what he's been doing.
Okay, we're gonna put a poll in the chat here. Okay. This is what it's gonna be. Did Bad Jackson get 50% or more of... Oh, wait, I have to actually click the poll button because I don't know how to do YouTube. What is the YouTube? All right. Where are you? Oh, there we go. Okay. Did Bad Jackson get 50% or more of this talk directly from Contested Bones by Sanford and Root? Question mark. Yes or no? There you go. I personally think that he's getting at least 50% of it from Contested Bones because he's making the exact same argument. Point out there are disagreements about various fossil taxa within paleoanthropology, and then say, therefore, paleoanthropology is all nonsense. Which, no, that's not how anything works. So that's our current poll for this. We're a little bit overdue for a break. So what I'm going to do is while you guys work on, voting and all that, Jackson and I are going to take a quick break, and we will be back as soon as we can be. So stay tuned, hit the like button, and we'll be back with a quick little kind of commercially thing, and then back into the Jackson with Jackson content that you're all here for. In a bit. All right, everybody, we are back. I have fresh Coca-Cola. Okay, it's not actually Coca. It's like a generic store brand because I'm cheap, but it's still fresh in here, along with fresh rum, which is actually aged because that's how liquor works. So I guess none of it's really fresh, but it's newly introduced, full concentration, to my cup. Jackson, you got some fresh green tea, which of course has been brewed in vodka?
I mean, mine was just in a bottle anyway, so no, it's the same one.
Oh. Anyway, guys, before we get right back into it, a quick little, ad, because, you know, this channel does help me pay for bills, and I like to be able to do that. I would, if you have not yet looked into the channel Patreon and the channel membership programs, please look into them. Getting in at the ground floor is not very expensive. You can do $1 a month on Patreon or $10 for a year. The channel memberships start at $2. There are multiple tiers. As additional tiers get you access to more things, but every tier gets you access at least to my early access videos, which is currently sitting around like 3 months worth. Last time I counted, I had enough pre-recorded videos to go up to January 12th without needing to make another video.
Dang.
Which is... yeah, it's a little crazy. Because I mean, I've just been nose to the grindstone on videos, been churning out 2-3 a week for months. And I only release about 1 a week, so you know it adds up. You also gain access to my patron and member only Discord server. It's only for people who are directly supporting the channel, and I think it's actually a great place. I will be honest, I was a little bit kind of iffy whether or not a Discord server for my channel would really do well. But, you know, I'm in it a lot. We have cool discussions. We help each other figure out, you know, questions, entertainment. We have various channels in there. We even just recently started a D&D game for some of the people in the channel. There's a specific D&D text and voice channel. So, yeah, so, like, there's a lot of stuff that's going on there. Again, access to all the videos. So if you haven't checked it out, please do. And if you can't do that, or you just don't want to do a membership thing, there are also other options. I have a merch store where you can get all sorts of t-shirts and blankets and pillows and baby onesies and mugs and stickers and all that stuff. So if you want to have any Dapper Dino brand merch, that's available. There's also an Amazon wishlist, which sometimes has stuff for the channel, but right now most of the stuff that was specifically for the channel has already been purchased, which thank you very much to those generous people who did, most of whom were anonymous. But there's also, you know, random fun things like, you know, gaming books or like, I think I have some pina colada ingredients on there in case anyone wants to sponsor a Dapper Dino's pina colada stream. So yeah, that helps too. But if none of that's right for you, if, you know, direct support with that kind of like monetary thing isn't something you can or you want to do, please just hit like and share the video on social media. That helps a huge amount because it helps the channel grow algorithmically with YouTube, which, you know, that's something it has to do. So, yeah, just please take a look. And if none of that's for you, that's fine too. Hit like and share the video. Anyway, Jackson, I think we're going to get back into this with Bad Jackson. What do you think?
Let's do.
All right, let's do it.
And then in 2015, Sadiba in 2011, Naledi in 2015. Now,
by the way, Skulator over 9,000 says, do you like pina coladas? Do you like dancing in the rain? Yes, I like pina coladas, but I'll be honest, in a departure from the song, dancing in the rain is kind of a situational thing, and usually here, if it's raining, there's also a thunderstorm, which I don't prefer to be out in, because I don't want to get hit by lightning. Which, it's a little paranoid, but whatever. Also, Jackson, have you ever listened to the actual lyrics for that song?
Yeah, he is going to cheat on his wife, and then it turns out his wife was trying to cheat on him, and they both realize it.
Yeah,
so.
They both end up cheating with each other.
Yes.
It's like, it's supposed to be heartwarming, but it's also kind of like, ew, this is gross the whole way through.
Listen, all I'm saying is, like, neither of them have the moral high ground by the end of the song.
True, I guess.
Because they
like,
were both cheating on each other.
Yeah,
so.
But then how do you move forward with your relationship knowing that your
Right?
partner is a definite cheater?
It's like it's the Spider-Man meme where they're both like, "You cheated on me," you know.
Yeah, I mean, like, sure, you're both equal at that point, but it's not with a good thing. Anyway, I want to say that DM Wing has upgraded their membership to Amniote, which is, of course, the second tier up above Tetrapod. My tiers always go from wider groups to narrower groups, going down all the way to Dinosaur, which is the tier on Patreon if you're crazy enough to give me $100. And so thank you very much to DM Wing, and Mackenzie Brown has sent some tetrapods, which is the appropriate thing to do when someone gains a membership or upgrades a membership, is we send some tetrapod emojis. Thank you very much, DM Wing. Here's some more, Jackson.
I think the other evolutionists and the evolutionist scientist community have had it with Berger, but this...
I mean, that's kind of true. We're going to take a drink for it because we still haven't done that. Look, Lee Berger and his like weird insistence that like Australopithecus sediba is like the ancestor of humanity and Homo sapiens evolved in South Africa. People are a little tired of it because there's not great evidence for it, and he doesn't care. He's just going for it anyway. And look, like I said, you're allowed to have your pet theory in science. You can have the thing that you're like a fan of, but at a certain point you have to give it up, right? Like at one point it was reasonable for Alan Fiducia to say that birds aren't dinosaurs. That hasn't been the case for like 2 decades at least. So.
Yeah, I mean, I really buy it. That's the 80s. Bacher was like suggesting, based on Deinonychus, that at least theropods were warm-blooded. It's like, oh, look at this. This is pretty similar to modern birds. But then, yeah, the case was absolutely clinched by the 90s when, like, oh, dinosaurs had feathers. Okay.
No, see, Jackson, those are just convergently evolved birds. Flightless, and they just evolved to be identical to dinosaur in every other feature.
Okay, look, the funny thing about that is they, like, try to take 2 separate arguments. On the one hand, they try to say, yes, they're flightless birds that convergently evolved to look like dinosaurs. And they still do occasionally, the so-called the feathers aren't actually feathers. They're
that
like,
too, yeah.
It's like, hold on a second.
Collagen
You can't have it. You can't have it both ways. First of all, no collagen looks like that. But second of all, you can't have it both ways. You can't both be like, they're birds and those aren't feathers. Like, no, one of these has to be true.
My favorite was when they pointed at some alleged collagen filaments in an ichthyosaur, which have been found. But some of the ones they pointed to were actually just tool marks left by the fossil preparator. Which means that they weren't really looking very closely at any of this.
Look, if you want to say it's collagen, like you said, like, yeah, we can find examples of collagen fibers. They do not, like, go perpendicular off the arm, and they're not, like...
They don't have
they're
melanosomes?
Not complex. They don't have melanosomes, they don't have, like, a rachis, and all these other features that we associate with feathers. Like, they're feathers. I don't know how you could possibly try to argue these are collagen filaments. It's
because
ridiculous.
You have a conclusion that you've already reached before you got evidence that you are not allowed to deviate from. It's the exact same thing as young Earth creationism. Like, look, Alan Fiducia is just doing the exact same thing as Charles Jackson. He's just doing it about a smaller subset of the fossil record.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Thing got on the front cover, on the front cover, but in National Geographic as the next step, Homo naledi. It's a big ancestor of us, and human-like species discovered in South Africa.
Well, okay, look, we say this every time. National Geographic, the History Channel. Neither of these are peer-reviewed outlets. Just put the actual paper title in there. Because you know there's a paper describing H. naledi for the first time, right? Like, that's a thing. You could just cite it, Bad Jackson. Like, that's an option that you have available to you.
Well, that is an option, but that is the option he chooses not to take.
Yeah, very consistently.
Well, there's Lee Berger there. Researchers admit that a lack of an accurate age, there was no rocks or fossils or anything they could test using even their age-determining techniques.
I don't know about that. I don't know if that's true.
For which one, Naledi? There were some There were some dating issues with Naledi because of like the environment it was found was like a cave or whatever. But I don't know if those have been resolved yet. I have not kept up close enough with it to say.
Okay, fair enough. My thing. This isn't my thing, right? Like, there's a reason that I'm happy that you're here for this, because you are actually better at human, like the human fossil record, than I am.
Marginally.
No, it's significant already. There's things you've said I'm like, okay. I might be better with dinosaurs than you are, and with certain groups of invertebrates.
I'm almost certain that's true.
Okay. Yeah, actually, it was actually weird. Dr. Joel Duff recently, in his most recent video, was like, "Oh, take a look at Dapper Dino's video. He knows a lot about dinosaurs." And I was like, "It feels weird for an actual scientist to cite me as someone who knows a lot about dinosaurs." Because I don't feel
you
like
know
I
your
do.
stuff.
To some
your
extent.
stuff.
Okay.
Listen, you can't be modest now because you and a few other people have been like, "Oh, but Jackson, you're an expert on this stuff," and I hate hearing that.
Okay,
So,
but to be fair,
you can't.
it's been whale penises mostly, and that's mostly a joke.
Look, whale penises are the one thing I will accept expertise in.
There you go. Guys, if you got questions about whale penises, talk to Jackson. He knows literally everything.
They couldn't figure out
Very
a way to
familiar with whale penises.
One might say intimately familiar.
test the age of the bones. They admit a lack of an accurate age complicates news of the discovery. Of the time frame of the genus Homo, us, is right, then Homo naledi must be somewhere older than 2 million years ago as a species.
Okay, I want to see what Bad Jackson says to complain about the fact that someone has made a testable prediction. Because you know he's going to be like, "Oh, this means they don't know anything, instead of saying, "Well, they made a testable prediction. Let's see how it turns out," which is the reasonable thing to do.
So I just looked it up because I was like, I don't know, so I bet the interwebs does, and the interwebs does knows.
Oh.
Homo naledi, from the Rising Star Cave, so the finds date to 335,000 to 236,000 years ago.
That's a lot less than 2 million years.
It's a lot less than 2 million years, yes.
Hey, Berger
Middle
was wrong.
Pleistocene.
I wonder if Bad Jackson will know that. Probably not. Although, to be fair, I think this is in like late 2000s. When did that study come out, dating them then?
Homo naledi?
Yeah.
Dating them? Because they were first found in 2013.
Okay. So I guess this is actually later than I thought. This video probably came out in like 2018 or something.
Roll on down. Anatomy, pathology, discovery. Blah 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 blah. Berger and colleagues published their findings in 2015. Fossils represent some individuals.
All right. Well, here's what I'm going to say. I think if Charles Jackson doesn't know that the dating has actually been narrowed in,
I found it.
That's okay. Okay, go ahead.
2017. 2017, the Dinaledi remains were dated to that time.
I don't know exactly
electron
when.
spin resonance and uranium thorium dating.
Yeah, I don't know when this video was filmed exactly, but it's probably old enough that like it's reasonable for him to not know that they were dated. So I'm going to let it slide on this one. Because look, here's the thing, right? I can't fault people for not knowing things that weren't known by anyone yet. That's not fair, right?
That's why. Dapper.
Look, it's like why I'm never going to complain that like a 1990s video by Kent Hovind doesn't have anything about like Homo naledi in it. Like, well, how could it? That's yeah. So.
But he also says it's possible, however, that the fossils could be less than 100,000 years old. That
turns out he was wrong on both ends. You know what? We'll take a drink for Berger getting nothing right on this one. Striking out, Berger.
Our first drink for a scientist.
Right? Vandalia 1998 for $2. You mean if you look stuff up, you get accurate info? Usually. It depends on where you look it up. Don't use the Creationist search engine that Eric Hovind runs. Don't do that.
Yeah.
I just find that hilarious that he has a bespoke Creationist search engine. Because, my goodness, not like information control is on the bite model of cultism. Okay. Be a little bit more culty next time, Eric. You're not quite getting the cult vibe hard enough. Your dad is, though. Okay.
That's a big gap. That's many, many, many times younger. And the lady here, Carol Ward from University of Missouri, weighed in Science News magazine right after the fossil find. Without dates, its evolutionary significance is unknown. So, and this is also...
That's true.
Relatively fair. I mean, like, if you... So, not just the actual morphological characters of the fossil, but also the date at which it appears in the record can also affect the interpretation of what it is. So, if you find something like, find some kind of mammal with, oh crap, what is it called? Was it Hyopsodonty? Like the constantly growing incisors? But you find them in the fossil record like 100 million years ago, it's probably not a rodent.
Right.
It may have evolved characteristics like rodents, or sorry, Hypsilodonty, that's what it is, Hypsilodonty. It evolved these characters like rodents, but independently. Right? We can be reasonably sure it's not a rodent. Same thing there, like Lazarus taxa, where like some group seems to have gone extinct at some point, and then you find another member of this group later on in the fossil record.
Now you see, just like with chromosome or Y chromosome Adam and mitochondrial Eve, the fact that they're called Lazarus taxa proves the Bible is true, and that all the atheist evolutionists know it, but they just reject it because they're too horny.
I would absolutely do that. Cannot deny. Horny Trump science every time. But it does happen. You can find things like that. There's the example, and you probably know this example, and you can correct me. There's like one instance of a dicynodont from like the early Cretaceous. One possible instance.
It turns out it wasn't.
Suspicious. Okay, so they already figured out it wasn't? Okay. Yeah. But like, if that had turned out to be correct, so that would have extended, because they went extinct in the late Triassic? Triassic?
I think it was mid-Triassic.
Triassic? So it was, that they went extinct mid-Triassic, but if this one had turned out to be a dicynodont from the early Cretaceous, then that means necessarily there's this ghost lineage that extends from the mid-Triassic all the way to the early Cretaceous, but it turns out that wasn't the case. But it does happen for other lineages. You can find stuff like that.
I mean, it happened with coelacanths, right? Turns out coelacanths are extant, but
yes,
the only fossil members of their, what is it, an order, are in the fossil record. And interestingly, all the fossil ones we have are actually freshwater fish instead of deep ocean marine fish, which is one of the reasons why we don't have their continuing fossil lineage, because deep water marine animals tend not to be preserved as fossils.
Yeah, so we actually have living organisms which are themselves Lazarus taxa, which is kind of cool. And their genus is also not represented in the fossil record, Latimeria.
Yeah, no, in fact, I believe their family, Latimeridae, is also not anywhere in the fossil record.
I think you're right, yeah.
So it's like, okay, this order of Sarcopterygian fish went away. It's like, yeah, but like this family doesn't have any fossil record. They clearly existed for a while. Oh, hi, Peter. Peter's here from Paleologos. Peter is, I believe, the winner of the first ever Cambrian Bunny Awards for Best Creationist. So, Peter, if you do want a 3D model of a trophy with your name on it, let me know, and I will send you both a picture as well as a file for that. So that you can make your own pictures of the trophy. Assuming I still have the trophy file that I had and it hasn't been corrupted yet. So, get on it soon if you want that. Alright, here we go.
Corrupted from being too horny.
So actually, I've had a problem where a number of my older blend files have actually had data corruption, and so like there's a few files that I wish I could access that I just can't anymore.
Yeah.
But it does happen, and they've been transferred across, and there's been like multiple new versions of Blender between, and so like I get it. Anyway, here we go.
A little fade shadow of a human skull, and then Homo naledi's skull there. Also, you can see that none of the facial bones. Most of the facial bones, you got the maxilla up here, and you have a little bit of the face, but most of the face is missing, but they managed to draw it in the whites of the eyes very, very prominently there.
no, that's not supposed to be Homo naledi's skull there. That's supposed to be the Homo sapiens skull. And the idea is that they've lined up the maxilla in terms of like anterior to posterior size. They're not drawing in hypothetical Homo naledi anatomy. They're drawing in known Homo sapiens anatomy so they can compare them. I'm taking a drink for not understanding what this is supposed to be. Because he gets it right that, like, oh, like, you know, up there around the cranium, top of the cranium, that's like Homo sapiens. But then he's like, oh, but they're drawing in fake Homo naledi bones. No, that's not what's happening. Oh my goodness. All right, here we go.
Now, here's another thing you need to know about the Lucy fossil, all the Australopithecines, and the difference
Oh
between
Lord,
them.
here it comes.
Okay.
Here it comes.
You know what? This is gonna be for Peter. Peter, tell other creationists to stop using Lucy as just a synonym for Australopithecus as a genus, please. Because so many of them do it, and it's so silly. Because then they conflate that one Australopithecus individual and its fossils with like the entire fossil record of Australopithecus. And I know you know that that's dumb because I've heard you complain about things like that.
Also, now that Peter's here, I'm more nervous to like make an anthropological mistake.
Uh-oh.
He's there in the side. Like, I mean, I don't like making mistakes, but at the same time, like, I didn't catch it. We'd just be like, oh well, we don't know. But now it's like, oh, we will know. We'll know.
Yeah,
the answer.
you're currently talking about paleoanthropology in front of the best creationist of 2020.
Yeah, there they have it, folks.
And modern
I know
humans.
what's about to come in is a spicy hot take. So here we go.
The human foot, you have bones in your feet and your hands. I can.
Oh no.
You know what? I'm being generous. We're going to take a drink.
No.
It is true that you have bones in your hands and your feet. Take a drink. This is accurate, sir. But yeah, you know where we're going. We're going to say Lucy had a divergent big toe, even though the Dakika child definitely doesn't.
I can curl my fingers to get a grip on something, but the bone between my knuckles is straight as an arrow.
Not in all humans, it's not. Gymnasts tend to have very curved finger bones.
But look on the monkey's foot.
Also, chimpanzees raised in captivity that don't have much opportunity to climb or brachiate tend to have straighter finger bones than most of their kin.
A chimpanzee's foot. And you can see the chimpanzee has an opposable thumb. It really has a hand at the end of its leg. But notice that the bones are curved in between the knuckles. This enables a monkey to get a perfectly round grip on a perfectly round branch. And that's
Sorry. It also really annoys me that he keeps saying monkey.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to let it pass because technically they are all monkeys. But also, why is he talking about perfectly round? Has he never cut through a branch? They're not all perfect. It doesn't matter much, but it's just weird that he's like a perfectly round branch. No. Branches comes in many shapes and sizes.
The Aristotelian like form of a circle. Dapper. How dare you?
Well,
obviously.
it would be a cylinder, wouldn't it?
Cylinder, yeah.
Okay.
I can't believe you would suggest that not all branches are perfectly cylindrical. Ridiculous.
By the way, it's the Platonic ideal, and I'm sorry, Plato.
Oh, you're right. My bad. Also, like, hang your head in shame. Ridiculous.
great if you live among tree limbs. It's perfect. And their foot is like that, and their hand is like that. But not human feet or human said about Homo naledi. It had dramatically curved fingers that indicate it was adept at climbing trees.
Okay, I'm going to just repeat myself from before, and we're going to take a drink real quick. Humans still climb trees. Having adaptations to being good at climbing trees isn't an indication that you're not in the human lineage, or that you're not a hominin, or that you're not a transitional form. Tree climbing is really handy. Lots of animals do it, and if it's an important part of your survival strategy, like, I don't know, maybe you're surviving on the savannah, but sometimes you want to eat that's up in a tree, it might be advantageous to be able to do it. And what you know what's a fun thing about hominins? They tend to be omnivores. They tend to hunt meat, they tend to eat leaves here and there, but they also really like fruit. which is also a common trait for genus Pan. So the idea that it might be handy in a place where, you might be calorie restricted and it might be dangerous, sometimes climbing a tree either to escape from a predator or to get some fruit is a really important part of your lifestyle, especially if you're a relatively basal hominin, which, Hominid is. And so therefore you're probably not as tall as Homo sapiens, or perhaps even as good at making tools as Homo sapiens, which means, you probably can't just toss a bunch of spears or atlatls or something at lions and jaguars and things coming to get you. I guess leopards in Africa. Jaguars are in South. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Wide, flattened pelvis and shoulders, similar to Australopithecus.
Yeah. So here's the thing with Hominid, right? There's a reason why Lee Berger said that it was probably very early. It's because it's relatively basal. But the thing is, the persistence of basal forms alongside derived forms isn't a problem for evolution. That's expected. Like, Jackson, have you ever heard of seahorses?
Once or twice.
Okay. Well, did you know that seahorses have a lot of really derived traits, like prehensile tails and these weird box-shaped bones throughout their bodies, and pregnancy in males and things like that?
I've heard of it, yes.
Okay. Did you know that within their family Sygnathidae, there are also pipefish that, while they have almost the same head, don't have prehensile tails, they don't do male pregnancy, they don't have those weird boxy bones in their bodies?
I've heard of pipefish, yes.
Okay. Are you aware that there are also sea dragons, which in some cases do have the male pregnancy, and they do have some modified bone structures, but they still primarily swim with tails rather than the dorsal fins like seahorses?
I've heard of these sea dragons, yes.
Yeah. It's almost like the family Sygnathidae on its own shows why evolution can both be true, along with highly derived and highly basal forms living at the same time. And in fact, pipefish aren't that hugely different from other members of Sygnathiformes, like trumpetfish, which is a whole other group.
Trumpetfish are weird.
So
weird looking dudes.
That's one of the things I really like Sygnathiformes, because it's an entire group where basically every stage of the evolution leading to seahorses is still extant. You have living transitional fossils for this group.
You have, so the cool thing about trumpetfish and cornetfish, all those guys, just if you look at Sygnathiformes as a whole, you basically have two clades. You have Sygnathidae and their relatives, and then you have the benthic fish basically. Most of the fish within Sygnathiformes look like normal fish, mandarin dragonets or mandarin gobies, whatever you want to call them. They're within Sygnathiformes. They're the Syncheiropus, the really pretty, almost sort of rainbow colored fish. They often appear in aquaria. And goatfish are also in that group. They look much like normal fish. And you have cornetfish who have seahorse head, but on a fish body.
Yeah.
And then you get progressively more or you get progressively thinner, and you reduce your fins, and you do your male pregnancy and all that sort of stuff, and you get closer and closer to what seahorses have. And seahorses basically took horizontal posture that is ancestral, and they vertical, and they do that because they fasten themselves to corals and seagrasses and all that sort of stuff, and kelp and everything. In fact, some of them are so good at it that they actually develop similar colors to whatever type of organism they typically fasten themselves to. So you have Hippocampus bargibanti, which is white with red spots. It's exactly like the coral that it typically attaches itself to. It's also white with red spots.
Yeah.
Seahorses, you have the whole transitional sequence. Yeah.
Seahorses and the wider Sygnathiformes might be one of my favorite examples of evolution in recent times. Just because, the whole thing, the whole sequence is still alive. And it shows so many different aspects of evolution. You can see directional selection. You can see all sorts of really cool novel traits. You can see, the persistence of basal forms. It's an amazing example. And they're also just really cool. Right? Who doesn't like seahorses?
Right?
All right, we're going to hit play, though, because we can't spend the whole time talking about Sygnathidae, even though it probably would be more fun for you and I listening to more Charles Jackson. The people here are here to hear us make fun of Charles Jackson by correcting him on obviously wrong things.
which is Lucy and that Africanus.
Just don't say that's Lucy. Never, unless you specifically mean the one particular individual. Just don't ever say that's Lucy. You can say that's the group to which Lucy belongs. That's fine. But just taking another drink because I hate it so much when creationists are like Lucy and they just mean Australopithecus.
Yeah.
Fossil. And then they said Homo naledi likely walked much like us. Okay, here's a problem. Because in 2005, they said Australopithecus afarensis almost certainly did not walk like us.
I thought they said that it had increased adaptations to arboreality.
Yeah, that is what they said. The Australopiths were bipeds. Even if they weren't walking bipedally on the ground, they were still walking bipedally in trees. Whack, I know, but it's possible.
Yeah.
Also, I have to say, first of all, it says size of orange. Is that supposed to be orange or orang? Don't know if that's correct. Regardless, is he trying to paint Homo naledi?
Yeah, it's gonna be orangutan. I think that's like maybe he spelled something wrong, and then someone was just other than him was just going through spell checking. They were like, well, maybe he meant orange, because I'm pretty sure that oranges have brains that are so small that you could call their size 0, which I doubt is true of Homo naledi, especially since I just saw its skull and profile.
So he's not trying to argue that like Homo naledi is actually like ape, not related to us?
I mean, he's definitely arguing that Oh, actually, that's a good question, because he says just like a chimp. He might be trying to argue that Homo naledi is actually just an ape and not a human at all.
That's why I'm like, it's in Homo.
Yeah, but here's the thing, right? You ask 4 different creationists whether or not a particular genus and species of hominin is a human or an ape. You're going to get like 5 different answers.
You got me there. Yeah, that's true.
So.
Just gravy. Okay.
Wing says
orangutan.
Nice. All right, here we go.
No arched foot. The navicular bones were probably from a Homo habilis. It's like an ape. It's flat-footed.
Oh, so we're getting the auricular bones were probably from a Homo habilis. So someone just tossed in some Homo habilis ear bones into the Rising Star cave. Yeah, this is definitely the contested bones kind of thing. Like, oh, it's probably just a chimera. Okay, sure.
Australopithecus afarensis almost certainly do not walk like us. I mean, like, were they as erect as we are when we walk? No, but they were still bipeds, and that's not being argued by any paleoanthropologist.
Yeah.
So.
And it's also, there's the question of what does it like a human mean, right?
Right.
Like, a chimpanzee walking bipedally walks a lot more like a human than a cassowary does, even though cassowaries are going to be walking bipedally way more often.
Absolutely.
And a cassowary walks way more like a human than a dog does. And a bear walks more like a human than a dog does. So, like, what? Where do we draw the line? And the answer is he's not going to tell you. Because any difference at all, he can spin as 2 different, therefore it's not just an ape. And any similarity, he can also just spin as C is just a human. It's like Schrodinger's ape, right? Is it a human or is it just an ape? It depends on what Bad Jackson wants to argue for. And he doesn't have to give you numbers or definitions. Because he's like, well, this is just a talk. Okay, well, I mean, that's great, but could you at least give us like a table and a quick definition so we can check on, whether you're right or not? Because Jackson and I are the kind of people who do things like, check your sources. In fact, I feel like, Jackson, you co-authored a book that was almost entirely just about, hey, did the creationists check sources? Because we did.
And you were correct. That was The Rocks Were There, Volume 1 with RJ Down, and we are working on Volume 2. But also, I just did that this past week with an Answers in Genesis article.
There you go.
Well, the editors of my script and I all looked over article from AIG and just shreds. So
yeah,
because
by the way, guys,
weirdly misrepresenting their sources.
The Rocks Were There Volume 1 is available on Amazon. Go get it. I don't get a dime. Jackson, I don't think you get a dime for one copy, but you get something, right?
In theory, yes.
Does that mean you haven't had a payout yet?
No comment.
Okay, guys. All of you buy like 20 copies.
You should buy it, though. Yes.
Yeah.
Buy the
Anyway.
book. I highly recommend.
Chris Reese says, can I give a shout out to the awesome community you have built around your channel? Some of them were willing to let a complete stranger, Chris, vent to them in the Discord about my crappy day, and it was awesome. Absolutely. So here's first, thank you for the $20, Chris. Here's the thing, actually. That's one of the things that I really like about my my Discord community and my wider audience, and especially my supporters, is there's some great people in there. And look, we even have a text channel that's just for heavy stuff and venting, so that, like, you know, we can support each other. So yeah, I really do have. Look, I know this is a little self-serving, and I recognize that. However, I do genuinely think I have one of the best audiences I've seen on YouTube. I think
you've got a pretty good audience.
Yeah, I really do seem to have attracted a really genuinely great group of people. And look, I'm not going to say that there are never any fights or anything, and no one ever disagrees. And but overall, I think it's very supportive. We're very accepting of different people, different walks of life, and you know what? We're here to have fun and talk about science. Good23 says, "Tisk tisk to shreds," you say, which of course is a great Professor Hubert J. Farnsworth quote from Futurama, talking about his previous crew right before he hires the rest of the cast as his new crew. Which is, if you haven't seen Futurama, go ahead for it. Oh, go watch it. Also, Theros Rex for $2 says, what does it take to be a guest on your show? So, there's no one answer to that, but one of the things that I do want to see from potential guests is previous work on some kind of video or like a podcast or something, right? I want to know, what is it like for you to be live with an audience on some platform, so that way I know what I'm getting into. Now, if you want to debate, it's a little less stringent, right? I do want to talk to you on audio at least once. Mostly to make sure that you're not a small child, because that did happen once. Where I agreed to debate someone, it turned out it was a small child, and after my opening, he basically just had nothing else to say, and I was like, well, I feel really bad now because I basically just like kicked a little kid to the ground and then just kept kicking, figuratively, of course. So that's
it's not your fault for that. It's not your fault. We have no way of discerning like avatars. Right on here, like
he certainly didn't type like a small child. He was actually pretty good at typing. So, you know, like the sentences weren't childish, and so, but yeah. So that's the thing, right? Like I have to have seen some work that you've done on your channel or someone else's channel, and also there has to be some kind of topic that I'm likely to talk about that you also are knowledgeable about. So, like, if you're an expert on like Finnish tax law, I mean, you might have the greatest screen presence in the world, but you're probably not coming on, because I'm never going to cover Finnish tax law.
Like I have to say then, Dapper, that I am happy to hear that I made the cut.
Well, you are. I mean, look, I've seen you live. I've seen this before I ever met you, right? I was watching your channel, so I was very familiar with how your screen presence before you ever came on. So, but yeah. That's the thing is, and also there has to be a plan, right? Like if you want to come on, it's usually at least a few weeks in advance that we plan this kind of thing. Anyway, here we go.
These were two guys from the American Museum of Natural History and from Western Michigan University at the American Association of Physical Anthropologists saying this in Scientific American. It's not the Creationist Sunday School Journal. So it had already been determined that Lucy, the afarensis, did not walk like us because of those toe bones.
Okay, so here's one of the things that's confusing me, right? So we have Australopithecus afarensis at the top, but then down in the middle we're talking about Homo habilis, and I'm not sure who we're actually talking about. But I'm going to take a quick drink for Charles Jackson, just being utterly confused about all of this. It's to the point that I'm not even sure what point he's making. So, here's the thing with the Laetoli footprints, right? Because we just talked about that. The Laetoli footprints are not identical to human footprints, modern human footprints. You know how I know? It's because of that same Robert Carter talk that I responded to, which is available on early access, where every single time he referenced that the Laetoli footprints were identical to human footprints, I talked about and linked to a different peer-reviewed study that said, no, they're not. And I got up to like 7 or 8 of them, and I didn't even scratch the surface. Right? If you think that the Laetoli footprints are identical to modern humans, you're wrong. Now, did Australopithecus afarensis walk more differently than Australopithecus africanus compared to Homo sapiens? I don't happen to know. But even if they did, that wouldn't shock me. So, yeah. And look, there's Paleologos backing me up on this. No, Australopithecus did not walk exactly like us. Yeah, no. They did walk bipedally. And yeah, bipedal locomotion can vary from species to species. Yeah, all of that's true. And also, none of it is, like, contested in evolutionary biology. So here's one of the things, right? If you want to argue against a position, you should be able to articulate the position to the point that someone who holds it agrees that you have articulated it in a way that they find acceptable as to what they believe, right? So for instance, if you want to say, oh, I don't believe in... I think Christianity is silly for reasons X, Y, and Z. If one of your reasons is like, well, I don't see how cheese pizza could possibly be the body of Christ, that's probably not a good argument. Because none of the Christians think that it is. So, like, know what you're talking about. So, yeah. And this is a thing that is a problem with even professional creationists. They will argue very forcefully against the straw man of evolution. And it's like...
Oh, say it ain't so.
Yeah. Also, Paleologos points out a related thing that is also annoying to me, too. He says, I just like how people are always like, Lucy was 1,000 miles away from Laetoli to act like the species never lived there. Meanwhile, Australopithecus afarensis bones are found right at Laetoli. Yeah, that is one of the sillier arguments. Is like, this one specimen was found far away. Like, okay, species have large ranges. Also, we found right there other examples of the same species. So, sorry that animals have wide ranges sometimes, I guess. But yeah, that happens.
Dapper. It's not allowed. They have to stay in one spot their whole life, obviously.
Well, you see, the real thing is everyone in the evolutionist camp thinks that Lucy directly made both sets of the Laetoli herself.
So, I have a new conspiracy to propose.
Uh-oh.
Lucy faked all the other Australopith fossils. All of them.
She was the one member of her species.
So now you might think to yourself, now hold on a second. Doesn't that mean she still was like real? So that I say no, she was just a weird chimp.
She
wanted to make up a bunch of fossils to convince humans millions of years down the road that we're descended from Australopiths, but they're actually all fake.
That's actually legitimately more plausible than Noah's flood, so... I mean, at least it doesn't involve the entire Earth becoming a new sun as it ignites into fusion because of how hot it is.
I can't argue with that, so...
And now they're saying it walked like us. Similar curved fingers, which would mean curved toes, I assume.
No, you can't make that assumption. Curved fingers doesn't automatically mean... Different parts of the body can vary at different times in different places, even within an organism. Right? Like, you can actually change how curved your fingers are during your lifetime by changing your habits. Don't get to just assume that. Taking a drink for curved toes means curved fingers means must be curved toes. Especially since we have Australopithecus afarensis toes, and they're much more like humans than they are like chimpanzees. They're inline, and like we don't have all the phalanges and whatnot, but they're not like noticeably more curved or like Actually, I don't know if it's at all noticeably more curved, but they're certainly not chimp-like in their curvature. So, yeah. Plus, of course, you want to argue, like some creationists have, that the Kika child is actually just it's actually just post-mortem deformation of the bones. Cool idea. Have you tested it? No. Have other people tested it and found out that it's not the case? Yep.
Similar to Australopithecus. It was no taller than 5 feet, less than 100 pounds, had a brain the size of an orange.
Oh, okay. Sorry, he wasn't trying to say it was the size of an orange. Okay, I misunderstood what he meant, though. He meant that it's the same volume as an orange, not that it's the same size as an orange's brain. And look, to be fair, it's not reasonable of me to always assume that Charles Jackson means the dumbest thing possible.
It's not?
It actually isn't. Because, like, in this case, he didn't, right? And yeah, the size of the fruit in orange, well, first of all, it's a bad way to put it because oranges vary considerably. Like, there's an orange tree out back, and those are not all the same size, even on the same tree. But, like, it's a rough estimate. I mean, it's smaller than a bread box, I guess. So, okay. You know what? Well, sorry about that, Dr. Charles Jackson. I assumed you were as dumb as you usually are, and it turns out in this case you were slightly less dumb than that. My apologies.
1/3 the size of a human. It's exactly like a chimpanzee.
Oh my goodness, we're taking a drink for it. It's exactly like a chimpanzee. Literally nothing about it is exactly like a chimpanzee, except that, like, it has the same bones. Again, I guess they both have a radius and an ulna and a humerus and a femur and whatnot. But no, Homo naledi is absolutely not a chimpanzee. Because that's the thing, is if it were just like a chimpanzee, that would mean it just is a chimpanzee. That's what those words mean. And no, it wasn't. There's no one in the field who thinks that.
Berger and his team originally submitted multiple papers on Homo naledi to the prestigious journal Nature, the most premier science journal in the world, the oldest.
Yeah, people say that, although, I'll be honest, over the years, Nature has become increasingly about selling copies, which has meant that they are much more likely to publish sensationalist but flawed studies than they used to. So I don't think it's actually going to be that much longer before Nature is no longer seen as the premier journal. I think it'll probably, unless it changes course, I think that scientists overall will start to find that Nature is more sensationalist than perhaps it should be. So, yeah.
Most esteemed, which rejected them. Berger and his co-authors ultimately published their findings in eLife, an open access peer-reviewed online journal.
Which makes them still peer-reviewed. Right? So, like,
Yes.
Here's the thing. It's actually not unusual for people to send papers to journals, like, somewhat consecutively, right? Like, if they feel like, hey, the notes that I got back from Nature are kind of nonsense, and I don't think that my paper is as bad as they think it is, so then you send it to someone else, right? Now, I don't know to what degree eLife is a good place to publish them. I don't know, because I've never heard of that particular journal. I have no idea what the peer review process is like.
It's just a journal, really. I've
Yeah.
seen a variety of papers cited in it, so it seems like a perfectly reasonable journal to me. I don't see anything weird or unusual about it. So
Oh, that's good.
it's not like Journal of Theoretical Biology, I'll say.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's basically like, hey, do you have a weird contrarian idea about biology? They'll publish it.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I think there is some value to the idea of having weird out there ideas somewhere in the public forum for people to encounter and talk about and critique, or perhaps find a reason to go then and research them further. But if it's going to present itself as similar to, like, you know, a real normal peer review journal, it's not. So here we go. We're almost done. We're going to actually probably wrap up after the next time we pause. So
Which the other evolutionists didn't necessarily like. This is the new.
okay, no one cares if you publish in a different journal other than Nature. That's not a thing. You can take a drink for, like, the other evolutionists didn't like it that Lee Berger published in a journal that isn't Nature.
What does that even mean?
I don't even know. Apparently they think that it's not fair that he would shop his paper around. which is a normal thing to do. Now, you're not supposed to shop it around while it's currently being reviewed for publication at a particular journal. But like I said, if you get it back from them with a rejection and notes, and you don't think the notes are fair, or you don't think all of them are fair, and you don't want to have to make all those changes because you think you have a solid paper, you can send it to a different group of peer reviewers. Because here's the thing, peer reviewers do get things wrong, right? Like, there are things that get past peer review that shouldn't have. And that can happen at Nature. In fact, there's a well-known bias in peer-reviewed literature to favor positive over negative results, even though negative results are just as valid on the whole. Obviously, there are false negatives and false positives. So yeah, it's not a bad thing to say, I wasn't accepted in this journal. I will take maybe some of it on board, maybe not. I'll send it to a different journal to see if they will publish it. That's a perfectly normal thing to do. I don't know why he's pretending that it's not. I mean, even creationists do things, right? Not every creationist publishes in, like, the one journal. Also, Dr. Joel Duff, who, by the way, go subscribe to Dr. Joel Duff's channel. He's got some really good stuff. And the fact that he's currently only around, like, 700 subscribers, I think is unacceptable. I think we should, our goal should be to get Dr. Duff monetized on YouTube, even if he or able to be monetized on YouTube, even if he chooses not to monetize, by, like, I don't know, within a year, I think is a perfectly reasonable goal. Go subscribe. And he says, eLife is good for extended length articles. I think the quality is inconsistent, but that's the case for most open access journals. There you go. Guys, we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you very much for coming, having fun with us. Seeing got almost 80 people. That's pretty good for a Jackson with Jackson Tuesday. Well, from what I mean for Tuesday nights in general. So, like I said, if you really like this stuff and you really do want to support the channel, do look into the Patreon or the channel memberships. Come and hang out. I do after shows on Tuesdays where we hang out and watch some TV on the Discord. I don't know who's winning the poll for that, but our options today were Power Rangers or Star Trek Lower Decks. Last I checked, Lower Decks was winning. So, you know, do stuff like that. And also, you know, like I said, do like the video, share it around if you can. And Jackson, what's coming up on your channel that we should know about?
The Hippo's Tale is up next in the Ancestor's Tale series. So, be ready to meet the hippos.
All right.
Then seals after that.
Okay. Aren't seals more closely related to hippos, though? Or am I just wrong about that? Oh. No, they're not. They're the same.
So,
they're the same, because Ferrungulata.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ferrungulata. Sorry about that.
Well, you'll meet seals because of polygyny. Haha.
Alright, so, let's see. On Thursday, the 29th, we have Carl Kirby, or I might just say Pastor, I don't know, doesn't understand primates, because Carl Kirby, back when I did my first series on him, told us that he was going to be doing another lecture or sermon or whatever on specifically human evolution. So if you liked this kind of stuff, go check out that video at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern on the 29th, because Carl Kirby is going to tell us just how much he knows about primates. And it's probably less than Dr. Charles Jackson. So get ready for that. Then on the 1st, I don't know, I'll probably do something. Then on the 4th, we're going to be doing Kent with Bent, number, I believe, 94. Might be 93. Ooh. I'm not sure. But Bent is going to be wearing his pink tutu. Because you guys got us to 200 in Super Chats on the last Kent with Bent. When that happens, Bent puts on his tutu. Now, he's going to be wearing it around his neck because his waist isn't visible on camera. But still, it'll be there. A pink tutu. So, also as a result, one of the videos that I have coming up is going to be, my avatar is going to be in feathers, because that happens at the 120 mark. And that's an every time, guys. So, like, if you wanted to, and I'm not expecting you to, but if you wanted to make sure that Kent with Bent involved permanent tutu, extremely generous, which it's perfectly fair that you're not, because my goodness, that's a lot. Anyway, that's what you can look forward to. Then I guess I'll say on the 6th, we're having the next part of the Carl Kirby and human evolution thing, where he specifically starts to get into like apes and homininidae and homininae. I can't say it. Yeah. So he gets specifically into those groups, and we take a look at that. And yes, I consulted with Gutsick Gibbon for some of the stuff in there. And there's a nice source list and whatnot. So, because you guys might not know this, but us sciencey types like me and Jackson and Gutsick Gibbon and Dr. Duff and Dr. Stern Cardinal, we talk behind the scenes to each other to get resources and sources and all that good stuff.
Fun fact, Erica and I just finished writing a script for a different YouTube channel.
There you go.
For quite a large YouTube channel. One we've all written for before. So yeah, it's kind of funny how much we all interact behind the scenes. Like, it may not seem like it, but we do. We are all like talking to each other a lot behind the scenes.
Actually, you gave me some sources for the script I'm writing right now. It's today.
Huzzah! That's right. We were talking about that earlier. Yes.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys.
Well, I can.
Well, with that, we're going to get out of here. Have a safe night. And if you are a channel member or patron, feel free to head over to the Discord, because in a little bit, I'm probably going to get myself a bowl of soup or something first. But in a little bit, I'm going to be over there streaming either Power Rangers or Star Trek. We'll see. All right, guys. See you later.
Thanks for watching, but before you go, I just want to say a special thank you to my channel members and my patrons, especially those pledging $20 or above. Bob Knob, Work in Progress, Benthoven, Denny5252, Ian Chen, Landon Knoll, Mabbity Babbity, McSpooks, Sphincter of Doom, The Venerable Veed, and Patrick Dennis. As you probably know, YouTube is a very volatile platform, and from month to month my income on the channel can swing wildly. But the people you see on screen are directly supporting, so that I don't have to worry too much about that, and the channel can keep going as it is, and perhaps even improving. If you'd like to join this team, there are links below to join the channel or in the description to join the Patreon. The Patreon starts as low as $1 a month, and the channel memberships start as low as $1.99 a month. On Patreon, you can even get a discount for pledging annually. If you do decide to pledge, you'll get access to an exclusive Discord server just for channel supporters, as well as early access to all of my pre-recorded videos, often up to 2 months in advance. Higher tiers will unlock even better perks. Now, if an annual or monthly pledge isn't right for you, but you still want to support the channel, there is a merch store down in the description, as well as an Amazon wishlist, just for me. And if financial support isn't something you can or want to do, then if you still want to help out the channel, please just like and share these videos and make sure you comment on them. It really helps the channel out. Thanks again for watching.